Really excited about our conversation today. If this is the first Twitter space you've joined with us, we're calling this series Creative Decentralization. It's our attempt to invite the people that inspire us and are building great things in Web3 to come share their insights and help us learn how to build something meaningful. And hopefully they can shine a light for us as we build Tableland and for you and your projects as well. I really think of this as like leaving the breadcrumbs for many projects to follow. And this is the second in our series. Like I said, if you missed our first convo, it was last week with Juan Bennett from Protocol Labs on building Filecoin IPFS and how they're thinking about decentralized systems. And you can find that now on our YouTube channel as well. For today's session, though, we're joined by Jiho, co-founder of Sky Mavis, builders of Axie Infinity. Jiho is the head of growth and community, and so you can probably tell what I want to talk to him about. I'm very excited about it. If you aren't familiar with Axie Infinity, I'm going to ask him in a minute to give you a little bit of context there, but just a couple data points to share. The last number I heard, and this was a while ago, so we'll probably need an update, but the last number I heard was like 2.8 million daily active users playing Axie Infinity, 10 million users all time. Axie Infinity is driven by their in-game NFT called Axies. And so far, sales of Axies have generated over 4 billion in NFT revenue. The highest sale of an Axie was $2.3 million. So definitely a very significant game as far as traction goes and as far as the way people are valuing and drawing value from their ownership of these things. And so really interesting. I think there's a lot to unpack here about how you build community thoughtfully and what it means to be part of a community like this. So today I want to learn all about that from Jiho and how he thinks about community. And he has some really interesting thoughts about how you design community and where it's really going. And so, yeah, we can all learn from the current success and from the vision. So welcome, Jiho.
Hey, Andrew. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. And yeah, thanks for the kind words.
So, yeah, I mean, I thought maybe the best place to start, because I'm sure we have people tuning in that don't know what Axie Infinity is. Why don't we start there? Just give a little bit of audience calibration. What is Axie Infinity?
Sure. So Axie is a game where you can battle and collect these cute, ferocious little creatures called Axies. The goal of Axie is to introduce the world to crypto and Web3 through a nostalgic and relatable package, right? Something that looks like Pokemon or Tamagotchi, but has all of these advanced new concepts attached to it. Axie is the #1 NFT collection of all time by all-time volume, with over $4 billion traded. There are over 2.5 million unique addresses that own Axies. That's the most of any NFT collection by about 4x. There are, we've 75% of our community are new to NFTs, 50% are new to crypto. So we're really getting Web3 into the hands of the people who have never used it before.
Yeah, that's such an important point here, is how critical games are going to be to just getting people into the ideas of digital ownership, and especially with Axie, the way that you layer in different ideas of crypto. So it's not just about the NFT. You also have the smooth love potion. You have your own Ethereum sidechain. You have some deep ideas in crypto that people probably like peel back the layers of the onion as they kind of move through the community. I guess I actually want to like learn a little bit about how you ended up there too. So maybe we back up a little bit. What was your journey kind of into Web3 and into Axie and kind of into your role as it is now?
So my Axie journey actually started as a community member. In March of 2018, I discovered Axie. Super early days. I think the project was only about a month old. And I thought that it had the potential to be a really important project because it was beautiful, and the vision of NFTs that you could actually battle and use and upgrade over time. It was something that really resonated with me. I was not interested in crypto and blockchain when it was just about money, but I grew up as a collector, as a gamer. And the first thing that I ever did on the internet was play StarCraft with my cousins, halfway across the world. That's actually also how I learned how to type. So from an early age, I knew that games could be this accessible way to introduce the world to new technologies. So when I found Axie, I saw that potential, and I thought that there was a lot that I could do to help the project. So I think, like many of you guys, right, when you see a project that really resonates with you, you kind of have this instinct where you want to help, right? So you might accumulate some assets within the project, and then start asking yourself, what can I do? How can I help this project succeed? And that's exactly what happened with me and Axie. And that is the spirit that I also strive to keep burning and to enable within the Axie community, right? To give the community many different ways to contribute to the project, regardless of their skills, their convictions, and their talents. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I want to learn a little bit about who builds Axie, but maybe we come back to that because you're getting to an area I really wanted to learn from you about, which is, a lot of projects talk about community, and it's one of those concepts that's so broad it kind of can become meaningless. And so that I think it's really interesting because you just talked about how Axie Infinity in this game is this really important onboarding piece for Web3. Yet in 2018, I remember being in Web3 and like most of the conversations were about how terrible the onboarding experience was. And so I imagine you probably experienced an onboarding in 2018 that's quite different from the onboarding that you give your community today in Axie. So I'd love to learn a little bit about that progression and how you help design that. And then I guess kind of a higher level question. I'd love to know who you think your community is. Like who are the different people that you think are building the Axie Infinity community?
sure. So with regards to onboarding, well, I actually think that the opinion of onboarding also depends on what you're onboarding into. So if you have a really bad onboarding process into an also really bad product, of course people are going to say, "Wow, like the onboarding experience, that was not worth it, and therefore it was bad." Onboarding hasn't gotten much better. It's gotten better. It's getting better slowly, but what's actually outpaced the quality of onboarding and quality of onboarding experience has just been, right, like we continued to upgrade the Axie product over time. And so even with a very difficult onboarding experience, we have been able to onboard millions of people into crypto. Why? Because there was a clear benefit and reason for interacting with the technology. So I think that's really an important distinction. Definitely there's a lot of work to be done regarding onboarding. It's, we need to get, right, like fiat ramps super smooth. We need to be in, the app stores and things like that. I think that's all going to really help with onboarding. But I also think that product development and making sure that the products people are onboarding into are actually worth using, I think that's also like the lowest hanging fruit. And actually, like, right, solving the root cause. Like the root cause of discontent around onboarding is that people are onboarding into things that they don't care about. So if they go through that process, to be honest, it's not that hard. Might maybe takes 10 minutes, something like that. That is something that people will go through, and I think we've shown that as long as people are entering into a portal into something amazing and interesting.
Yeah, I think this really relates to something I heard you once say. I think you said it was something like that you didn't like the term community management, and you really liked the idea of community design and thinking about how you link each of these things. Do you want to maybe just explain a bit about how you think about community design and what your approach to that is?
So, right, the idea of community design is that you're proactively creating systems and experiences that get people to contributing in the community and finding their place within the community more naturally and more easily, because it's already through this kind of premeditated process. So, one of the things that we do is we map out like who are the people that make up our community, right? There are the PvP battlers, there are the collectors, there are the breeders, there's the scholars, there are the scholarship managers, there are the content creators. Those can be further divided into Twitch streamers, YouTubers, people who make Discord bots, fan sites, developer tooling, artists, right? Like people who just want to host meetups, people who hold Twitter spaces, people who make like Twitter threads and insightful posts, people who make guides, right? So there are basically so many different types of archetypes that basically anyone can contribute and become a member of the Axie community and contribute, because the ways to contribute are so broad and so open. And so just making sure that the community understands that and giving them opportunities to show their skills, I think that's really important. It's something that, it's not, we're not necessarily, amazing at it. And I think we definitely need to improve, but we're thinking about it. We also think a lot about, right, like the flow of information, like how do people find out about the vision? Do people understand the vision? How do they find out about Axie? How are they talking about Axie? And we have, for example, like a creator manual that basically, right, gives people things, the recommended, I guess, way to talk about Axie to their friends and family to make sure that this movement keeps spreading.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I actually heard you also say one time that Discord changed your life. And it predated Axie, and it was for, I think, it was discovery of CryptoKitties. Does Discord still play a big role in that community design thinking, or do you think it moves beyond that in the near future? Like, are those tools still critical to growing that, all those roles and those conversations and that design that you're imagining?
Yeah, Discord is definitely really important. One of the interesting things, right, is that we've hit the Discord cap.
Yeah.
And right, like we were I think we're only one of 6 servers to have ever hit the cap on, how many people can actually be in the server at a given time, which is 800,000. There are now 100,000 Discord servers that follow the main Axie Discord server. And yeah, like, I think one of the difficulties of community building is, how do you maintain a really tight-knit feel when you become really large, right? So this is the superpower of communities, and actually strong communities need to be small before they can become large, right? This is actually the paradox of community building in a bull market, for example, because yeah, I believe that having a small community and letting it marinate is really important before you can actually scale. If you scale too quickly, then your community doesn't have that strong foundation and the pillars that are needed to be able to actually support the weight of that growth.
Definitely. And marinate, I've heard you actually say struggle like through the bear market, actually like have to go through their own challenges in order to grow together, right?
Yeah, so I'm glad that I was saying this when things were going really well in Axie and NFTs and NFT gaming, because obviously the last couple of weeks especially have been really, really rough for our community. But there are a lot of people who see this as an awesome opportunity to really show that they're here, that they're missionaries, that they're long-term thinking. And everyone can say that during a bull market and when times are good, but who actually can do that when times are bad? That's when you actually learn a lot about people. And I don't judge. I don't judge anyone. Actually, I don't judge people who, right, like kind of go back on their word. But it is interesting to kind of keep an eye on that kind of thing. So definitely, hard times are opportunities. They hurt while you're in them, but always looking back, people have a reverence and a respect for the people that went through hard times. Just like, I have respect for people who, fought in certain wars. Obviously, this isn't to the same degree, but right, there is that. This is when you earn your medals. This is when you earn your badges of honor, your stripes, right? Like, these are the times that the community can prove itself. And I'm seeing that within the community with a lot of awesome new people kind of stepping up. But I'm also seeing that even internally within Sky Mavis, where, right, some employees, they grew when they joined when Sky Mavis and Axie were already big, but now they see this as their opportunity to contribute and to become part of the myth, the legend.
Yeah, that's really cool. I do actually have some questions about kind of the current things that are unfolding, and some of your perspectives on that. But backing up even, like even the way that Web3 sort of congregated around Discord and um, and like how that became so good for your own growth. I'm curious if there's other specific moments, either, during the bear market or just the way the community, gave life to scholars or other significant moments. What do you think some of the really significant moments were for Axie that were critical to its success? Maybe even interesting ones that maybe didn't seem so critical in the moment, but now you look back and you're like, wow, the community would not be what it is if it weren't for that.
Sure. I mean, I think going through the bear market of 2018, 2019, where everything went down 95%, I think that was a really right. That improved the immune system of the community, right? Like everything in crypto is about becoming Lindy and anti-fragile. So actually, the more near-death experiences that you can go through as a community, the stronger you become. It feels really bad while you're going through it. I totally relate because I've been there many times. But in my opinion, it's actually really necessary. There's this article written about Ethereum. It's actually underappreciated and underread and undershared. It's called Ethereum, the Anti-Fragile Hydra. So check that article out. It was written in, I think, 2019 or 2020. It talks about all of the near-death experiences that Ethereum had and how each one of those was really important, right? Like the DAO hack, the parity bug, right? All of these experiences were times for the community to bond together, and sometimes you have to face this existential threat to really believe and to put your flag in the ground and say, this is what I stand for, this is what I believe in. And so I think those types of moments are really important. So I would say 2018, 2019, going through that. I think the current period as well, in 3 years, we will also say that this was a critical period for the community where we really set the course for the future. I think it's also been like a kind of a kick to say, hey, like, right, the stakes here are high. Victory is not assured. We need to move fast.
Do you think that, at least the genuine the genuine projects in Web3 and crypto-based projects, do you think they have a stronger likelihood of having that anti-fragile characteristic than, say, a Web2 project? Is there something about our communities and the way that incentives are aligned, or like that creates that, or is it just a strong community anywhere can lead to an anti-fragile technology?
There's this social element where any Web3 community can become kind of like a pseudo social network, so that even during times where bad things are happening, or the product is still being developed, right? You can have this focus on community building, right? That's why I think like community as a core product is really important, because community building doesn't necessarily rely too much on development resources, if that makes sense, right? It's like it's like a constant thing that you can always be doing, and it's relatively democratic and egalitarian, where any project can introduce new ways of community building. So and I think that community is unique to Web3. Community strength is uniquely strong in Web3 because you have inherent incentive alignment between users and the builders. And this is not the case in Web2. Web2, the only value that users are getting from these projects is like utility, right? It's like whereas there are many actually other types of value that participants can get from being part of a Web3 community.
Yeah, definitely. I think about this a lot with, framing people's contributions to, say, TikTok or Instagram, where the people that are joining these communities are putting so much effort into growing the value, but then there's a real disconnect in where that value comes back to them, and how people that like see the financial side of these networks are seeing that value accrue. And yeah, I've heard you mention before that there is, and there has been a long conversation thread about the vision of a social network emerging from Axie Infinity, having it go beyond the game. I'm wondering, like, actually, actually pinning that directly to a social network, I was wondering, in like a historical context, what did, say, like Facebook get wrong? Why couldn't, like is there an alternate reality where Axie Infinity was deployed alongside a Farmville and Facebook was really like nurturing a true community there? Or is there something that, like, is there something that, that really is unique in Web3 to aggregating all these people and this alignment? I think I know it's in the crypto systems. I'm just really curious the way that like a game development company thinks about that.
Well, to the incumbents, we represent a threat to everything that they stand for and their entire business models. So for them to switch to accommodate builders like us with very small, relative communities right now, it just doesn't make sense. They believe that they're, from a game theoretical perspective, that they're playing Nash equilibrium, which is they maintain their current business model and they don't spur the growth of the thing that could actually kill and disrupt them. So that is their bet, right? And I think they, from their behavior, they feel very confident in their positions, and maybe that's justified. But I think on a long enough time horizon, then we become a threat to everything that they stand for. And I think that's, yeah, like, if these Web2 companies, they shouldn't necessarily shift into Web3 because they basically risk like destroying all of their like maybe 90% of their revenue stream. So I'm really bearish on incumbents like switching and moving into Web3. That's also related to gaming. Incumbents meaning like the dominant players with large market share in their respective markets. I'm actually very bearish on that. And yeah, and you see, okay, like Meta is interested in the metaverse, but apparently the transaction fee or the commission that they're going to take from digital goods sales there is 50%, which is even worse than the app stores. So, right, like they feel very confident in their position and that the up and coming Web3 builders have no chance of actually disrupting their businesses. That's what those types of actions say to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So really interesting. I helped run the community and growth side of a Web2 company for a while. One like really lasting ideas I had was that in a company like that, broadly, you kind of go through these different phases of community growth. And in every phase, you always sort of have to abandon a subset of your past community in order to get to the next level of growth or the next level of company size or whatever it is. And you see this time and again. And I think that the whole underpinning of play to earn and actually having users own part of the network that they're building is having such a massive impact on rethinking how that plays out. And we haven't really spoken directly about play to earn yet. So and myself, and I'm sure many other people, Axie Infinity was where we were really introduced to the concept of play to earn. So could you actually spend a minute explaining what that means and how it works specifically in Axie Infinity?
Sure. So the idea of play and earn is that gamers should become owners of the universes and the games that they play, right? So by playing Axie, you can earn tokens that allow you to create more Axies. Those Axies actually represent access to the game, right? So if people want to play Axie and there's demand for people to own more Axies or play Axie experiences, then, right, you have that capability to create that by actually just participating in the economy. You can also earn, right, the governance token, Axie Infinity shards, by placing on the leaderboard right now, for example. There will be many more ways of earning it in the future just by playing the game, right? So this is the first time. It's really what Ready Player One was kind of hinting at, right? Where you're basically giving away the universe to the user base. It's just not like, right? It's just like chopped up into 270 million tiny pieces rather than giving it all away in one kind of scavenger hunt. right? So this is the idea of, right, player-owned games, player-owned economies, they're going to be much more powerful in retaining people and keeping engagement and emotion and attachment. Why? Because you're actually turning your players into partners with you, where you collectively own the game. So this is the idea. I'll also say that, right, like, not everybody can participate as a speculator in these economies, right? There have to be people who buy Axies because they see them as collectibles, because they see them as pets, because they just want to have fun with them. That type of spending is actually what makes, right, the entire ecosystem more sustainable over time. And this is definitely a common criticism of Axie, is that, right, like, there are a lot of like more speculative crypto people coming in who basically, they want to play Axie to make money, and there's not enough of that kind of behavior where people are just spending for skins, for fun, for status. And that's definitely a big aspect of our development roadmap, right? Where we're creating these sinks to help balance the economy, where people are spending for a lot of the reasons that they spend in traditional games or even in the physical world.
Yeah, I really love a few pieces from Chris Bernitzky at Placeholder VC, and he talks a lot about how speculation drives innovation in all capital systems, but in crypto, how that loop is really tightened. And actually, like thinking about the Axie Infinity numbers, 3 million daily active, 10 million total. It's such a small fraction. You're still in such like a fast, innovative period where you're like building up to the big goal of where you want to get to. I'm curious, like where do you see, like how do you think about users actually playing the game, or even speculating, just interacting with your protocols and your APIs and your systems? How do you see it adding value to the whole network? Like what's the thinking behind that? And yeah.
Sure. I mean, so everyone, what I'll say again is that everybody has a way of contributing to the network. So one of the examples that I'll use, which, because I think this is really, really important, is, right, like, there are people who say, why should, right, some random person from an emerging market, why should they be paid to play a game? What are they actually adding, right? But so one of the things, right, like, is I actually see this in the framework of user generated content, where okay, in order for a game to be fun, people actually, right, fun is very subjective, but one definition of fun that makes sense to me is, right, people have fun when they're in flow state. How do you get into flow state? Flow state is kind of defined as a situation where you're being challenged at the edge of your abilities, right? So you're basically playing against somebody who is near your skill level. It's not too hard, it's not too easy, it's in that Goldilocks zone, right? And with Axie, the way that our MMR system has been structured, right, is that, like, you're being incentivized with token rewards to play at your true MMR, because the higher your MMR is, the more the token rewards for playing. So by simply playing the game, people are contributing player liquidity, where you can get, the more people that are playing, you get a faster match with someone that's more likely to be at your skill level. This creates a higher percentage of players in flow state at a given moment, and therefore actually makes the game more fun. So this is why I believe that token rewards, play and earn, actually make games more fun. This is a clear example where you're basically ensuring or using real money incentives to increase the number of players that are in flow state at any given time. So that's kind of like a more technical game design way of thinking about it, because everyone says, hey, like, these Web3 games need to be fun. Well, fun is actually not a scientific term to me, but flow state, right? That idea of being constantly challenged at the edge of your abilities, that's actually something more specific that game designers actually strive for. So yeah, just by playing the game, for example, scholars, they're actually adding a lot of value to the ecosystem. We just have to make sure that that value is also, right, like, kind of fine-tuned, and also the idea that there's this free market that over time will average out, I think also helps us get closer to that equilibrium.
I've seen a gamer stream playing you actually, and it was so fast paced. And how do you rank yourself in gameplay?
There's like a saying, I think, in game development, that right, like you're good at your game for the first couple of days of release, and then the players just like to start to destroy you. So
I bet, yeah.
yeah, so I in the early days I used to see myself as an Axie player, and for sure, and I definitely still have like a little bit of a hand in some of the the balancing and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there are crazy pros now that just destroy me.
So I have a little flag in my notes here that the topic of the recent hack, and I don't want to I don't want to like push it aside, but I don't actually want to spend a lot of time focusing on this. It's not really why I wanted to talk to you. I do find it super interesting. It's a really important topic. I just think it's something that we should let the Axie Infinity team unpack with a real journalist like Laura Shin or somebody. But I do have a few questions about it that I think are really important, probably for understanding how you're thinking about community and growth and where you go. I guess for folks that are on the call that don't know, what can you just tell us about the hack to kind of set the scene for that?
Sure. So on March 29th, we found out that the Ronin validators had been compromised, and right, that a lot of ETH, a lot of USDC, I think it's an amount totaling over $600 million or $600 million, had been drained from the Ronin bridge. We've said that this attack was due to a social engineering attack, and we can say that the FBI believes that the Lazarus Group, a hacking group, I guess, associated with North Korea, were behind the attack. Yeah, so I think we have to be very careful about what we say publicly about the investigation, as it's an ongoing investigation. But those are kind of like the main details. Yeah.
Yeah, so people that were listening earlier that maybe didn't have that context, now some of the comments you're saying about going through the hard times really being critical for understanding your community, and if you can get through them, having stronger community and really having the best people there. I guess that really relates to my main question and kind of line of thinking is like, what do you think the lasting impacts of the hack will be on the community? Are there lessons that you think you walk away with in that community design thinking, and that you might make the whole project better? Or is this just financial loss that needs to be slowly recovered for users? Or like what is the impact on community here?
It's still TBD. What I'll say is that it's an amazing opportunity for us to show that we're here, we're committed to the long haul. Likewise with many of our community members, but of course right now it hurts, and we take ownership, we take responsibility. This is something that should have never have happened. It was a mistake that happened because we were driving 1,000 miles per hour on a kind of race for mainstream adoption, and it was a lesson that was really hard learned the hard way. Incredibly difficult lesson to learn. But I'm hopeful that in 5 years, when we look back on this, that we are all going to be proud of the way that we comported ourselves. And to be frank, that's actually, that's what kept me pushing and kept me optimistic and able to function during, the days immediately after the hack. It was like thinking, like, in 5 years, in 50 years, how are we going to look back on what we did during these days, and how did we set a tone for the people around us, the community around us, even the space.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm eager for a dedicated unpacking of this in the near future, but I'll leave it for now. I guess I'll just say, like, yeah, I really, my heart goes out to people that were affected by it, and I really hope they get righted. And I hope your team is remembering to say, oh, go ahead.
I should add is that we raised $150 million, and that, combined with Sky Mavis balance sheet funds, will ensure that all users are made whole. So the remaining kind of question mark is around the Axie community treasury. There was around 55,000 ETH in there. So that is uncollateralized for the moment. That does belong to the Axie DAO or the Axie community treasury. But one hopeful thing that we saw today was that Binance is claiming or asserting that they have been able to link around $6 million to the hack, and they believe that they're going to be able to access those funds and return them to us. So there's positive news there. So that's I think, like, if you convert that amount to ETH, it's right around 2,000 ETH, and so there's like a 55,000 ETH shortfall in the treasury. So it's a start. It's that I think is a start.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say also, I hope, I can't imagine the stress in the team going through these moments. So I just hope everybody stays, staying sane and healthy internally during this. Is there a good place where listeners can follow updates on this topic? Is it just the Axie Infinity Twitter? Or is there a good blog that they could follow? Or
so there's a Ronin Network Substack, and so we're keeping that updated. I'll also say, the community definitely deserves and wants a postmortem, and we're working on a postmortem that will kind of go into all the details that we can, and I expect that to be released next week.
Excellent. We'll be looking out for that for sure. So, okay, turning the focus back to the community and kind of the bigger thinking, and now looking towards the future. I do need to step back for a second, because right prior to the hack, you've been working for a while. Actually, I think probably like a year or something ago, you announced that V2 was coming. I think it was called at the time. And then later it was given the name Origin. And recently Origin became playable. And it's a really significant update to gameplay in Axie Infinity. Can you summarize some of what those big changes were and why they were important?
So Axie Infinity Origin is our third iteration of the battle system that we've been building up and upgrading over the last 4 years. You can actually think of it as an entirely new game, but it definitely does have a lot of the elements that made Axie super popular and an awesome game to kind of spread this wave of NFT gaming adoption. So Origin introduces 3 free starter Axies for every single player. So if you've never tried Axie, you can actually start playing on desktop through the Mavis Hub right now. You'll get 3 free starter Axies, fall in love with the game, the universe, the art, before having to make any blockchain onboarding decisions, any economic decisions. So that's, for that just by itself, I think makes the onboarding so much easier. In addition, right, we've added a more intuitive turn structure. So when you play a card, your Axie immediately springs into action. So it's a little bit more intuitive for a traditional gamer. The art is upgraded, the animations are updated, and there are now runes and charms. So runes are things that you can attach into your Axie that will actually upgrade those Axies. And charms are actually things that you can attach to the cards that each Axie comes with. So there's so much more customization and ability to actually upgrade and progress with your Axies. And this is a really important step towards helping create a awesome progression system that helps balance the economy, right? The idea is, okay, people will spend for runes, for charms, to upgrade their body parts. They'll spend in-game resources that, right, basically then becomes a non-inflationary sink. Right, the problem with Axie, to be frank, is that right now we only have one sink, and it's an inflationary sink, right? Where basically, if you create, the only way to burn SLP, for example, is to create more Axies, right? You breed, you burn SLP to breed, then you have more Axies. These Axies become SLP generating machines, right? So the current model is very growth dependent. In my opinion, that's a feature, not a bug. That made it so that we needed to race for adoption for the economy to work. But now that we've gotten to this critical mass and we've actually been able to introduce the world to our brand, the next question is, right, how can Axie make this economy sustainable? Well, we know the answer. We know the path forward for it. It's actually quite analogous to just looking at the best syncs of all time from traditional games, and then okay, you apply them to your Web3 game, and right, the only difference is that you're substituting in-game resources for tokens.
Yeah, that you kind of answered a question I had, which is, it feels a little bit like when building these systems, you could have the crypto economics or the sinks or that strategy, and then you have the community strategy. But what you said is kind of the answer to what I was wondering, is like, how much did community strategy impact this new design? And it seems like completely. It seems like the idea here is to move from that early hyper growth to figuring out, yeah, how do we keep growing, but make it so that it, like, we don't have to achieve, double this number every month in order to have it,
I mean, that's actually how real economies grow too. In the beginning, you're growth dependent and you're reliant on inflows of foreign capital. And then every economy goes through this transition where they have to transition from being investment focused and growth focused and export driven, right, to becoming like a consumer driven economy, right? I took this class in college, I think with Stephen Roach. It's called The Next China. It's like basically, how does China transition from being this export and growth driven economy to becoming a consumer driven economy? And actually, Axie is actually going through those same things. And it actually, like, I think growth can also, like, right, like, we're still very early in the grand scheme of things, and there aren't that many Axie players in the grand scheme of things. So, it's definitely a combination, right? Like, obviously encouraging growth while also bringing in consumers.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's like massively successful, yet when you take the number of people in the world, it's still so small, and so many more people could be trying this and playing it. And I heard you once say that your personal goal for the community was 4 billion Axie Infinity users. So that's still your number?
I think that's I think that's I think it's definitely possible, and that I think I think my mental framework for that was, I was thinking about how many dog and cat owners are there in the world, and then, okay, dog and cat ownership is not sustainable in a modern age, and people like me, for example, I cannot have a dog. I had to give my dog up to my parents when I joined the Axie team. So in the future, digital pets are actually going to be replacing physical pets a lot, and that's, I think, a huge growth frontier for us. Is like, right, like, people need to know that their Axies love them. Axies need to be imbued with artificial intelligence and the ability to learn, and only then will we actually be able to, in my opinion, like, take our rightful place. And so, right, like, this is a chess versus checkers thing. A lot of people think that we're disrupting gaming, true, but is disrupting the pet market a bigger opportunity? The gaming market is around $180 billion per year. The global pet market is around $280 billion per year. And everyone in Web3 gaming is trying to disrupt gaming.
Yeah, really interesting. I think that gives probably some clues to strategy that you're all thinking about too. That's really interesting. It's that, like, kind of big thinking, and I'd imagine that there's a step beyond the pet market too, because of other things that you said. And I've only heard a few technologists talk about techno communities evolving into more nation state sort of entities. And I've heard, Zuckerberg obviously has talked about it. Balaji has talked about it. And I've heard you talk about it in a way that I go, oh, okay, interesting. And how you draw on social networks, and that network is basically alignment of belief. And that's very similar to the way people think about national currencies or nations. So there's some really big thinking you have here. And I'm curious, like, let me start with, like, what is your take on the Axie Infinity sort of universe and the metaverse? Do you think that it grows into a place where people are just spending their time? Because that seems like a different tack than it is the place that hosts their digital pet.
I mean, so what we're seeing is, right, everyone talks about the metaverse. Why? Because we're seeing a trend accelerated by COVID that our digital lives are becoming increasingly important relative to our physical lives. So the natural end game for that is that a lot of the reasons that people spend money in the physical world will be diverted to spend that type of spending in the digital world. And it's that transition that will sustain these digital economies.
So, but the digital economy in Axie Infinity sort of right now, it's purely sort of this gamified experience and then some other pieces that layer onto that. But like you'd be imagining storefronts, you'd be imagining interactions with the Axie DAO, so governance, things like that. Like, is there a broad sort of playbook in your mind to making this a full like a universe that people are going to, or do you imagine it really staying more linear as games and pet ownership? And
I think that on the surface, things look basic and fun and cute, especially in, this is with regards to Axie, but the second order effects are much larger. So I think that just taking things step by step and making things that spark joy in people, that is the key to unlocking like all these more complex things, right? It's like the Chris Dixon quote. I think it's Chris Dixon, where he says that the next big thing is a toy. Will start out looking like a toy, and I totally ascribe to that. So.
yeah,
and I don't want to sit. I don't want to sit here and say that I know. I know exactly the steps that this will emerge through. I think like the thing to expect is that it's going to be counterintuitive, and it's not going to be the way that Hollywood and the mainstream media expects.
well, I think that's an excellent thought to leave this on. It's been super enlightening, and I know I've learned a bunch of things here, and I can't wait to actually listen back to it and unpack some of the ideas you're getting at. So, Jiho, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, man. Really enjoyed it, and let's do it again sometime. Sending love to all the people in the audience. Thanks for coming. I see a lot of awesome people have tuned in. So sending love to everyone, and have a great weekend. Get some sun, get some exercise, drink lots of water.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.